the people here. I just thought we would go over it because it never hurts for even us ones who have been doing this for a while now together to go over the fundamental premise. One of the fundamental premises of the kind of, it would be a very distorted use of the word curriculum to call it a curriculum. But one of the premises of the teaching that I do is that the mind has no answers and the heart has no questions, and that our return to our heart is the return that we're looking for in order to live from the higher frequency of love instead of fear. And so this is a movement that I think is it's being supported by technology and a planetary kind of awakening that's probably experienced by many people in very different ways. But at the heart of it is this shifting out of a frequency of fear and into the opening, the connecting frequency of what we call love. The other premise that we use is that whereas something called the direct path, which is like the dropping of the idea of an ego identity and the realization of the idea that I know who I am as awake awareness, that is the direct path. In other words, it's like awareness arises and the individual fear-based ego goes down. I don't know what this word is. So what we're looking for here is that what I have concluded after many years of working in groups and with many people is that we are actually seeing reality through a distortion field that was created by a conclusion that we made about ourselves out of an early wounding experience. And this is, I mean, what's the buzzword these days in social media is trauma, right? It's like trauma. But how it actually is installed and then is influential in how we both perceive and receive reality is, I think, at the heart of the matter of the shift from our ego identity, which is based in fear, to our true nature, which is awake awareness based in love. The method that we use in the Sangha here is called the 6 Steps to Freedom process. And it involves realizing that I have installed and the installation has gone deeply subconscious, a conclusion about myself. And so the 6 steps uses whenever you're triggered and your present experience to use that being triggered, that reaction, to go through the steps to find out what the early experience was as a child, when mommy didn't pick you up on time from kindergarten or whatever happened, and you concluded, for instance, I'm not good enough. And that's what got installed. And that's now the lens through which you perceive the external reality. And so if somebody gets ahead of you in the line at a Foodland, you immediately go into the reactive aspect of that conclusion, I don't matter. Instead of being authentically present and saying, excuse me, but I was in front of you. Without any charge. See, we get charged, don't we? Everybody knows how this works because we all have had the experience of what we call being triggered. Being triggered is actually the gold of the process to find out what it was that got installed that's been instrumental for your entire lifetime in creating your experience. So that the French poet Anais Nin, I should say it right, has a quote from her that says, you don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. And that's a pointer to this distortion field that I'm pointing to. The being triggered in the Sangha here, we all agree that that's gold, that's the opening possibility to start to look at something that's been running things from the subconscious level and creating a world that we then interact with from a place of a wounded child. So it's very powerful, it's very potent to find how we have installed this distortion field. The other thing that we do in the Sangha is that we are together in a conscious agreement that waking up is possible, right? That it's not just pie in the sky or some kind of never available shift in perspective, shift in consciousness, shift in identity that's rare and only available to all of those Indian gurus and their devotees. It's a simple matter of coming home to oneself, and I do believe that that's available now because there's so much technology that supports many teachers, not unlike myself, who've had an awakened experience and live from the clarity that is what is everybody's birthright. So we can go over the steps today. We can work with anybody who has an issue or anybody on our cars. Are they there? I'm only seeing a black screen. There. Yeah. They disappeared, Mommy. So we can work at that level. I also have an offering that I've used before. I was had a spiritual teacher who did a what would it be, a rendition or a version of the Lord's Prayer, which I think is really powerful and takes us into true nature. I brought that today so that we could experience that together. But we can also do the work at the level of where there are triggers, because what we want is there is no shame and no need to try to cover up. We don't need, I always call it putting sugar over shit. We don't need to be doing that here. We need to get down and dirty and find out what it is that's creating an experience that I deeply feel is not mine. It's like something happened to me. And whenever we have that experience of something happening to me, that is a trigger. And we can find what our identity is in that creates, you see, that's the other part of the teaching. I just remembered that this is a frequency reality, and the frequency of love is what is lacking here, because incarnating into this 3D reality, we take on what's something we probably had on what we call, this is a sketchy little area, the other side. We consciously had still a frequency of fear, and that pulled us back into an incarnation in this 3D reality, where it's fundamentally fear-based energetically. And so we're individually releasing the frequency of fear and falling out of our minds and back into our hearts and into the spacious, awakened possibility of heaven on earth. So we're here to create a new reality within ourselves as our frequency shifts, as we notice what keeps us from experience what we deeply intuit is true, which is love and connection, the oneness. So the options here, and we can vote here on Zoom and in the room. We can do a 6 steps work with somebody, or we can do the Lord's Prayer. Little
I have a suggestion. How about if you do the Lord's Prayer then after?
You weren't here when we did it before, were you?
No, and after you do the 6 steps.
Okay.
I record that. No, I'm not reading, please. No, not me. Somebody else.
So it's called the prayer of being.
And Robin's going to read it. I can't see it to read it. She's going to read it, and I'm going to expand on that line.
So you want me to read one line at a time?
Yeah, I think so.
I am in heaven.
So the I am lives in heaven. That's our true nature. That's awareness. That statement, I am, points to who I am. I am. And, I always think about how literal it was when, I guess it was Moses ran into the burning bush. and said, who is this? Who are you? And the voice said, I am that, I am. And we were literally informed at that point as to the truth of our nature, right? But we just attribute it to burning bushes, frequently seen around Maui. And and the sense of it's not about me, you know, that was about God. But that was the literal speaking of God to us, the one I am. That's it. That's the whole story.
The revelation of myself is holy.
So as we live from that true nature, we are living into the expression of the I am. We will use our talents, our gifts in expression, but knowing ourselves as the I am, the one I am, and in expression, not any longer caught by the distortion field of our wounded identity. I don't matter, I'm not good enough. Now the I am is in full expression, and that's a different frequency. That's the frequency of love.
My kingdom comes because I am here.
So the place that I am here, that implies the fullness of true nature and the kingdom that arises out of that. When we were doing the meditation, and my suggestion today was to be seated in what you wanted, right? What you wanted to experience and feel what it would feel like, because it's that frequency of experiencing that is the information into the quantum field. And that's what creates.
My will is done in earth because my will is done in heaven.
So my will is done in the projected, what we think of as earth, in the body mind, and in the reality of the 3D reality. It shows up out there. What is occurring in our inner planes, in heaven, in our consciousness? The frequency is there, and then the reality that matches that is out, shows up.
I give the bread of life in each moment of my living on earth.
So whatever we're offering, if we're offering from that place of our true nature, the one I am, then that's life-giving because it's vital, it's vibrant, it's life. I give the bread of life in each moment of my living on earth. As we come home to ourselves and express fully, then the vitality of aliveness is through connection, through invitation, through response. It's just the aliveness, the bread of life.
I forgive, and that forgiveness is received by those who share the spirit of forgiveness.
I think that points to a whole opening into how resonance works. You know, it's like I may be in a place of clarity and love and forgiveness, but if when I'm offering that and the one I'm the recipient of it is not matching that, then it will not have a place to land. But when we are in expression, the resonance will show up in our world. The forgiveness is available. It's alive in us, and then it shows up in our greater world, in our connections, in our relationships, in the love that we share. Forgiving. It's all for giving.
I lead no one into tribulation, but deliver all evil into the creative cycle.
The teacher that I had at the time made a correlation between evil and evil. In other words, evil is where if we stop something in the middle of its arising, it will look like it was evil. Right? But if we allow it to continue to unfold, it will be an aspect of evolution. So what it points to is to not be in resistance to what's happening, but to be in connection to, how would that be? To offer something different into it, a different perspective, a different awareness, right? so that the judgment wasn't to stop it in its tracks. And then we have the mess that we thought it was never gets to go to the next stage, whatever that is.
For mine is the kingdom present on earth, because I am present on earth.
So we live in the midst of the materialization of the frequencies that we partake of. And this is a matter of becoming more acutely aware of how creation works, right? It's not to blame ourselves or each other for not being at a high frequency. It's to see that if I'm present here, what does it say?
For mine is the kingdom.
Mine is the kingdom, yeah. I will be receiving whatever I'm expressing, even, and that then goes out and shows up as in reality. But I experience it first, like if I have judgment or shutdown or limitation in my own mind and heart, I experience it here, and then my world reflects it, my kingdom.
Mine is the creative power of the word.
The word's the frequency, and that's our creative power, the frequency that we carry. When we're shut down, when we're caught in a childhood wound of a feeling of being a victim, a feeling of being not good enough, or I don't matter, then that's what we experience.
And mine is the glory which results, shining round about, to be reflected by the world which I create.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. So even if when it's showing up like the shit show that we often feel like our lives are, even if it is showing up, then it's reminding us of how it happens. That's the glory of it, right? That's the receiving of my participation in how reality shows up. And it's from this place that in clearing identity, in clearing the limited fear-based identity that we find from being triggered, that we start to be in clarity, that we start to be in peace and ease and presence and in this moment. Because what takes us into the future or catches us with guilt in the past is our idea of not being good enough, or whatever victim conclusion our childhood wound installed with us. So thank you all for receiving that. It's one of my prized teachings. So who's got a trigger? It's like trigger.